Sorry for the delay, everyone. My previous class went longer than I expected. All right. How's everybody doing? This one is going to go kind of quick because we've already done a lot of these parts. So I'm not going to go over half square triangles because you should know how to do them. We've done them a few times already. So we have our half square triangles here in the corners, and we did use the corner beam for here. Like we've done that a couple times already also. What we're going to do now is we're going to add to the corner beam our corner pop, which is just like this. Now, so it'll look like this. To know what to cut, hold on, just let me get where I'm going. You have, first off, you have the largest square that I just cut in half to get our corner triangles. It's pretty self-explanatory. You've already made the V block, and the only thing I haven't done with the V block yet is to trim it up. So we are trimming these up to 4.5 inches. It's super easy. And we have to start them upside down. That's the only thing I get confused on, because normally, like with the wing clipper, I start with the V on the top. So we're going to start with the V at the bottom and use our 4-inch mark, making sure these side lines, diagonal lines, are in our seam allowance. And we're going to trim up 2 sides and the top. Then I'm going to turn it 180 degrees. Start with our 4.5 inch mark here and here, and make sure our X is on our seam. And then we can cut our side and our top. There you go. All right. So now our V block is cut and trimmed up. Okay. Now I'm going to use the corner pop. So the corner pop, hold on, I'm just going to get my pattern so I can remember. Which ones, which which measurement to use. Two inch. So I'll push this up so you can see. We want this corner unit to be right there. And right there. So we're going to put our diagonal line here and our 2-inch mark on the edge and trim up our corner. One side. Now if I turn it around, I'm going to do the other side. Again, 2-inch mark, keeping the diagonal line on the side so we can cut this corner off. Now, if we lay that down, we've got our side triangles ready to sew. And of course, I forgot to put my machine on. You know, it is what it is. It's one of those days. I was not expecting my previous class to go so long. It kind of gave me got me all messed up. All right, I'm just gonna start my machine. Wait for it to completely start up. So here's our side triangle. And I lay it with the triangle on the back so that I can see my points and make sure that they're somewhat even. You don't need a ruler to sit here and measure them out. I want to eyeball them and make sure I have enough of the dog ears on both sides that are somewhat even. And we're going to sew it. Iron this out. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, we're going to sew it from the back. And looking at it, just make sure my dog ears are somewhat even. Using the corner pop, what it does for you is it gives you the option of ironing your seams in either direction. So you can iron it this side out, or you can iron it in. And it just depends on how you're putting it together, putting your quilt blocks together. But it really does help with your seams. Now I want to iron this one out. And using my corner pop ruler, sorry. Now I'm going to use this side. So we cut a 2-inch corner off. So if I put that 2-inch corner back on, make sure the edge of the ruler is, it's easier for this stand it up. All right. So if we put that 2-inch line right on our seam, make sure the edge of the ruler is even with our white block. And what I'm also doing is making sure that the lines here, the dotted lines, are even here also, because we're cutting across. Then 1, 2. Then you can turn it and do the same thing on this side. So we're going to put our 2-inch line. Make sure it's even here. Make sure it's even here. And then you can trim up this little bit right here. There you go. Now we just got to put it together, which is super, super easy. This is, whoops, sorry, block 7. I've already put half of it together. Now I just have to put this last one together. So I'm gonna, so this one on here on this side, this part on this side, I'm gonna iron the seams out because these 2 seams are in. All right. So if I sew this one down, and I'm going to sew this side on. Double check to make sure it's, I gotta go a little bit more. I want to make sure that I move closer to this X, so I'm not showing as much seam. I'd rather sew it twice, smaller the first time, than sew it too big and then have to cut it out. There you go, look at that. Almost the points match up perfectly. So now we're going to iron this out. I'd rather sew my seams a little bit smaller, especially when I'm trying to line up all of these points, and then go back and just sew it a little bit further than to sew it too far the first time and then have to rip it out, which is not my favorite thing to do. All right. I just got to make sure all of these seams stay where they're supposed to. Because it makes lining everything up much easier. If you iron, take the time to iron the seam open, make sure it stays open through the entire process of making the block and then putting the blocks into rows. You'll have a lot less trouble later on with quilting it. All right. So all we have to do is line this up. Oops. That's what I mean. You want to make sure all your seams stay as neat as possible. So I'm going to line up this seam. The bottom seam is going to the left. The top seam is going to the right. So they will nest together very nicely. Same thing with this one. Just on the outside of the center square. Now, these seams you have an X here. So if you go just to the X, a thread width, but you also have this diagonal seam here. So what I suggest is you take a ruler and mark 1/4 of an inch over the seam. Okay. I'm going to go into this X and into the line, the 1/4 inch line right on the seam. it should line up perfectly. Go. Now we're just going to sew it. Hopefully this is working. Yep. Okay, now we're just going to sew it. And I want to make sure I don't cut off my point here. Amazing how much better your machine runs when you clean it. Just saying. Last week I had a terrible time with this machine. And it really needed to be cleaned. All right, let's see. Not bad. Other than thinking right here, I need to sew it just a little bit further. Fortunately, I couldn't see that 1/4 inch line, so there you go. Perfect. Oops, wrong one. Here you go. That's block 7. Isn't it pretty? I'm loving these blocks, I have to tell you. All right, now let's move on to block 8. So block 8, we're going to do basically the same thing. We've already done these flying geese, little flying geese, and this is a bigger flying geese. Now we're going to use the corner pop to like this. Okay. So let me look at my directions. So just go when you're looking at this, don't get frustrated. Just follow the directions one step at a time. That's all you have to do. So on this, because this flying geese is a fairly good size, we're going to use the corner pop and we're going to cut it 3 inches. So we got a 3-inch line here, and we've got our diagonal line there. And we're going to cut 1 corner. And it takes me a little while sometimes moving these around to make sure I've got the right angle. So just go slow. Once you do one, just lay it out so you know exactly what you have to do for the next one and go slow. There you go. Now we have a triangle. So we went from a flying geese to a triangle. All right, just like this. So now here are, again, this was a larger square that I cut diagonally and have to give my side triangles. Just going to do one side, iron it, sew it from with the triangle in the back so that you can make sure without using a ruler, we're just eyeing this, that your dog ears are somewhat even. Oops. There we go. Now I'm going to iron this out and then we'll put our other corner on. All right. That's what it looks like so far. Now I'm going to put right sides together, put my triangle underneath, and eyeball the dog ears to make sure that they're somewhat even. If you feel you got to pin it, by all means, go right ahead. I don't pin a lot of things. Plus, the nice thing is these are all bigger. All these units are bigger than we need them, so we can trim them up. They don't have to be exact. Now, I'm just going to iron this one out. Now, we have our corner pop. So, you put your 3-inch. Let me think the easiest way to do this. Sometimes it takes a little bit of thinking. Okay. 3-inch. Okay. What I'm going to do is put my 3-inch corner pop down and keep this dash line on the bottom because this will make sure that you have a 1/4 of an inch up here. So we're going to do one side, keeping the dash line where it needs to be underneath here. Let me move this up so you can see it. All right, so I've got my 3-inch corner and this dash line down here, which gives me a 1/4 of an inch up here. I've got my 3-inch all the way down here at the bottom with the dash line and on the seam. And then for over here, I'm going to put the 3-inch down with my dash line here, 3-inch on the seam, even here, even here, and then trim up that one piece. There you go. So now all we have to do is sew on our cornerstones and then sew it on the rest of our block, and our block 8 will be done. I'm loving all of these stars. Star blocks are some of my favorites. Come on. Just when I said my machine was being nice. Just got to sew this other cornerstone on. Make sure I got the right side. All right. These we're going to iron in. So the cornerstone, it's going to be in. I think. Yep. In. That way we can line them up with the rest of the block. All right. Now lining it up is very simple. Since we ironed our seams in opposite directions, they will butt up against each other and nest very nicely. Oh, I gotta iron this just a little bit more. All right. Now I just gotta sew on this seam, and block 8 is done. And we have another one in the books. Oh, you know what I did? Hold on. Got my pin's going in the wrong direction. Let's try that again. Here we go. Sometimes, you know, it's just the way it goes. I want to line them up from this side so that when I sew, I can see this one and not cut my point off. So my, you know, cut it off or sew it where it doesn't want to cut it off. Some of you who have seen some of my other classes or taken some of my other classes, there is a method to my madness. See how I put my pins on an angle? Not so that I spent all this time trying to line this up. I can sew and stop with my needle down in my seam before I take my pin out. Sometimes the act of just taking the pin out is enough to misalign your seams. So yes, there is a way to pin, in my opinion. That's why you'll notice I sew with my needle down when I stop, just for that reason. So I can sew, put my needle, stop with my needle down in the seam, and then take my pin out. So I've got my X here. I want to make sure that I'm on just a thread's width on the right side of the X, not in this side, not on the left side. I pick up my foot to make sure my seams stay flat. Stop with my needle down, take my pin out, readjust, and we're almost done. Now let's see where we are. All right, so that seam lined up really nicely. That seam lined up very nicely, and I didn't cut off my point. There you go. Block 8 is done. I hope you're enjoying this quilt as much as I am. I love star blocks. I just do. I've always loved them. And when you're first beginning, the star seems to be one of the hardest blocks in the world, but it's really not. It's just a lot of flying geese normally, and that's it. So until next week we'll be doing blocks 9 and 10. And hopefully I won't have to, excuse me, I have itchy nose. I won't have to postpone this class because my previous class is going to go over. Hopefully that is not the case. If it seems like that's going to be the case on a regular basis, I might look at switching this class to like a Wednesday, just so that it's on the same day all the time and I don't have any interruptions. Anyway, that's it for me. I hope you have a great weekend. You know where I am when you need me. Thanks. Bye.